NCO, net control operator, what on earth do they do? So Tom has graciously agreed to let us behind the curtain and see what goes on. And the hopes in doing that, besides education, is to have some of us kind of pick that up so that he doesn't have to do it every week. So that's why we're asking him to show this so that we can have more of our members have a chance to do this. So Tom, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
I joined the club in 2010, and I think somewhere in 2011, I moved to first shift because I couldn't make meetings. It was kind of hard to do anything on the repeater. I'd listen from work sometimes. And sometime in 2011, Nels asked if I'd be interested in learning to be the repeater vice president. And I said, okay. And I don't remember how it started, but somehow I got roped into volunteered to be the net control for the Tuesday night repeater. And back then, I don't remember there ever being a script. But yeah, I saw a lot of the guys that were around back then are not with us, unfortunately. But I don't remember there being a script, which I'll get into in a minute here. So I just, when I started the net, I just came up with something out of my head because when I call for check-ins, the air would be dead. And I'm like, is this thing working? But after a while, if you know Nels, WA9JOB, who's silent key now, he was always the very first check-in, always, unless he was not around, out of town, or in the hospital. So sometimes I'd call for check-ins and there'd be this huge delay. And then someone else would realize, oh, I think Nels is gone. So they're always waiting for Nels. So anyway, so I've been doing this for a long time. And I'm just going to go through some things that I do on the Ozaki Radio Club net. I have never run any other nets. I've listened to other nets. I've watched YouTube videos. So I've never done a weather net or emergency nets or whatever. So what is an amateur radio net? Well, it's a gathering of amateur radio operators, obviously, usually on a specific frequency, day and time to exchange information or traffic. There's lots of nets in the area. If you're familiar with 513 has a swap net. Oz Aries has their net. All kinds of clubs have nets. There's basically two types of nets. There's a directed net and an open net. Directed means all communications goes through the net control operator. The open net means that you can pass back and forth. Our LaFrog Club has a net where we just kind of go around robin. Somebody comes in, we'll throw it to him, and the next guy comes in, we'll throw it to him, and it just comes around. Open nets can sometimes have a net control operator. So as I said, for as long as I've been a club member, the net has always been called the Tuesday night informal net, or the Tuesday night 2-meter informal net. And even though its name is informal, it's really a directed net because we do have a net control operator. Our net, if you're not familiar, is on 146.97 megahertz repeater, and it starts promptly at 8 o'clock. And for several years now, I can't remember when we started, we've been linking the 220 repeater for the net as well. Greg has programmed the controller, it'll just automatically connect for us. So a net control operator runs a net control station, or NCS. And in my case, my net control station is my apartment. The net control should have a strong signal to the repeater. So if you'd like to be a net control operator, hopefully you've got a strong signal. I live really close to the repeater, and I've used my handheld, but sometimes that could be susceptible to interference. So it's best to use a a mobile rig. In my case, I can get by with 5 watts. I don't have to use 35 or 50. Have lots of paper, pens, pencils, water, liquids. You want to stay hydrated. A computer is handy, but it's not necessary. There are logging programs. There's NetLogger, I think, is one that some people use. I sometimes use the computer to look up call signs on QRZ if I'm not familiar with who's calling in. But we do have a number of regulars on the Tuesday night net. And a comfortable workspace. I can sit in my recliner. I've got it set up. I can sit there for an hour or so. You want to be comfortable while you're doing the net. So net control operator, what do? Well, he's the person that facilitates the flow of radio traffic during the net. It's kind of like steering a bus or being a conductor of an orchestra. You're in charge of all communications. The net control operator takes check-ins, keeps a log, and I just use a scratch paper. And I don't save the logs for very long. I just make a list of who's on the net and keeps an order. So the goal is to keep the net running smoothly and efficiently and maintain order. Well, what are the duties? You start the net on time. Punctuality is important. I always try to start right at the top of the hour. We do have a script that we came up with. As I said, I had something in my head for many, many years, and I will always just say it. And when I had Fred and Jean Ann fill in for me, they said, oh, we need something. So I wrote it down, and they kind of went through it, and they changed it a little bit, which is fine because it's an informal net, and I guess you can pretty much run the net the way you want. So I take check-ins, and then when I get to the end of the list, after people have actually gone through things, I call for late check-ins, and then after everyone has had a chance to speak, you can wrap up the net, give announcements, and then return the repeater back to normal use. That's kind of normal duties of the net control operator. So how do I run the ORC net? Well, I've got ID 5100 that I set up as a receiver. And if you're familiar with the radio, you can record conversations on that radio. So I usually start recording on the net. Sometimes I forget. Of course, when something important's going on or somebody wants to know how they sounded, I might have forgotten how to set the recorder. As I mentioned, Greg, W9DHI, has set the controller to automatically link the 220 repeater to the 2-meter system. And then I call up the repeater system map to see what the voder's doing. Now, if you're not familiar with that map, it's on our website, OzakiRadioClub.org/voter, and you can see when someone keys up which site is being voted to. I always try to start the net at 8 o'clock, right after the ID at the top of the hour. Try to be consistent. Excuse me. I transmit on a different radio, and I listen with headphones. Now, you could turn up your second base radio, but it gets kind of loud, and sometimes I don't hear as well as I do with headphones, so I usually use headphones. Sometimes I transmit on 220, but I always listen on 2 meters. So I can tell if people are doubling, and sometimes I can tell readily if someone's on 220 or 2 meters. Then I give my version of the script. So what I usually do is I act as though no one's heard our net before, and I say this is an open net. It's open to all licensed radio amateur operators, technician class or higher, or novice class for 220. You don't have to be a member of our club to participate in our net. Trying to encourage people just to have fun. So the purpose of the net is to promote the club, promote the repeaters, and maybe have a fun conversation. Then I call for check-ins and I scribble them down, and some guys go pretty fast, one right after the other. Some nets, you might have heard, they take check-ins by the alphabet after the letter in your call sign. We don't do that. We've always had it just first come, first serve. Like I said, Nels was always first. Of course, he was JOV. After I have a list, sometimes I make a comment about, well, what did I do this week? Or what did I notice? I was out for a walk and I saw the moon and I thought about Artemis 2, or I talked about the weather, and talked about a swap fest that I was at on the weekend. Our net is open, and basically we talk about anything except politics and religion. Then I start down the list, and I go hopefully in order that they were taken. Sometimes I forget when we have a mobile check-in, I try to take them first. But sometimes I scribble them on my list and I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's got to be first. We average 8 to 12 check-ins. We've had as many as 15, 16 sometimes, which gets to be a really, really long net. I try to have the net only go for about an hour, and it's up to the list. We usually do 2 rounds and then a 73 round, which can be pretty long. So sometimes I forget to announce it that, after the first round or after the second round, if there's a lot of people, you can say you're 73, and I'll just scribble down on my notes 73, and this guy skipped him on the next round. And then I call for late check-ins and we start round 2. And as I said, depending on the size of the list, we can do a second round and a 73 round, and those on the list can decide whether they want a 73, or you can even 73 after the first round. It's all up to you. And at the end of the night, I usually give my same kind of speech about check out our website. Our newsletter is available for download. Stan's Computer Corner articles are available. You can download a flyer for the upcoming Spring Swap Fest. You can buy tickets and tables. A lot of stuff to look at on our website. Of course, we have a Facebook page, something to check out. And I said, I like to finish by 9 o'clock. And we sometimes go longer. And one of the reasons I like to finish by 9 is that when the band conditions are right, we're picking up the 146.97 repeater in Hinsdale, Illinois. Now, they have a different tone, but they can hear us and we can hear them sometimes. And we've actually had check-ins from, was it Brookfield, Illinois? Somewhere like that. And one time I did hear somebody from across the lake, believe it or not. So I try to wrap that up because their net on 146.97 starts at 9 o'clock. So just kind of out of courtesy. It doesn't happen too often. So are you excited about what I just said? Are you interested in being a net control? It's really not hard, especially on the Tuesday nights. I mean, it's pretty easy. I'll admit, first time it's kind of nerve-wracking. I even make mistakes. Recently. That's what happens. We try to keep our net fun and light. And I was hoping that someone will consider it. I know we've had some people interested, but they don't want to do it every week. And I get that. I'm just looking for maybe someone to do once a month. We had like 3, 4 people to do once a month. That would be a nice rotation. If I'm not around, or Greg's not around, or Jean Ann, or whoever. Yeah, once a month or every couple months, that would be kind of nice. So what are some tips and tricks if you were new on net control? Well, listen to other nets in the area. They all run them a little bit differently, but you might get a practice listening to call signs. Try logging call signs when you hear them on the net. Test your radio gear to make sure you have a strong signal. And again, I recommend using headphones. Have plenty of paper, pencils, pens handy, because if you're scribbling down call signs, you don't want your pen to die and not have another pen or pencil. Or you can use a computer. There is a program that I've heard of, which I haven't used. It's called NetLogger. It's pretty handy, but what if your computer crashes? And as I said, have liquids for hydration. I bring cough drops because sometimes my throat gets dry. I get a frog in the throat like halfway through the net. Again, have a comfortable place, a comfortable workspace or a comfortable chair, and definitely use the restroom before the net. As I know, as we all get older, the old bladder doesn't hold up. And sometimes when we've gone past 9, I said, well, I need a break. The net control needs a break. But if you were doing a more serious net, weather or storm spotting or emergency, something to think about, or oftentimes you have another net control operator that you can pass it to, so then you can take a break. Turn off distractions, such as the TV. Sometimes I have the TV on, like the baseball game's on, or if there's severe weather, we can make comments, oh, there's a tornado watch going on or something. Again, refrain from religious or political discussions. You don't want to upset somebody that maybe doesn't feel the same way you do, or you may not feel the same way they do. And so let's just keep that stuff off the air. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. As again, I make mistakes all the time. And we just kind of laugh it off usually. So Tuesday night net is informal. You can run it as you want. I mean, we will provide a script, which I don't have on the website yet. But as I said, you can run it as you want. You could actually have a topic if you want. That's one reason we call it informal. Any questions? Anybody interested in being a net control on Tuesday nights?
So, I'd like to say a few things, Tom.
Just a minute. If so, contact me or one of the other club officers, and we'll get you squared away. Go ahead, Greg.
Okay. Wanted to, let the people know that if you bring up the voter map, that will only show the 2-meter signals. If somebody's on 220, it's not going to light up a receive site. But you can tell when the automation turns on the links, starting at about 754, 755, it changes the courtesy tone on both repeaters to an N. One is slightly different in tone, but you can tell if you're on 2 meters and you hear an N tone at the end of the person on keying, it means that they're on 2 meters. If you don't hear it, they're on 220, and vice versa. 220, you only get the N tone on the frequency that the actual talker is on. That's how I've got it programmed. And the net is not over until Don, K9MOI, tells his bad Kroner joke. And it's really easy. Anyone can do it. If Gene Ann can run the net, anyone can. That's all I got to say.
Okay, this is the voter map that we were talking about. And, excuse me, Greg, can you key up a radio? Okay, so there you saw in red, it turns the main site, which is a 2-meter push to talk. And it's being received at the main site, and on Mequon, it went up to Belgium. So that's during the net, I can see sometimes where people are voting to, and sometimes like, why? The voter does act up every now and then. It's like, why is it voting to a noisier signal? And then when we link the 220 repeater, it says 220 link there, it's off, but it'll turn on and be green, so we know that we're linked up for the net. So that's, oh, there he goes. He connected, or he's transmitting on 220 there. So that's some of the things that Greg and I watch, and actually it's on our website if you want to sit and watch it. And sometimes you can tell where you're being voted to. Yes.
I've never tried listening to both repeaters at the same time. How much of a delay is there between the two?
Very, very slight.
There's none.
Well, on my radio, there is a slight delay. So if I'm listening like on my Kenwood THD 74, I've got 2 meters on one side and 220 on the other. It sounds a little echoey, but as pretty much there's no delay.
Right now, I'm talking on 2 meters and listening on 220, and I'm not hearing any delay at all. There shouldn't be. The two repeaters are hardwired. There's not even an RF delay. If there was, it wouldn't be anything anyhow. So you can see I've got the 220 link on right now. I'm talking on 2 meters, but it's transmitting on both 2 meters and 220. So I'll give you an idea, Chai.
I just would like to say that being a net control operator is a great experience. But being a net control operator for a net such as ours, which is informal, doesn't necessarily give you carte blanche if all of a sudden we do have a tornado go through Cedarburg. But it's nice to be able to at least report to Aries groups throughout the country and let them know, yes, I've had experience with running a net. And they'll probably, hang by you and listen to you operate for a while and know that you got it taken care of. But it's just very good experience to have under your belt.
No.
So if someone is interested in being a net control operator, should they contact you, Tom, or
Yes,
should they go
contact
about
me or the board members, but yeah, contact me and we'll work on getting you a script, something you can read over, practice. That's the other thing, practice. You don't have to be on the net to practice. You can practice at home. Any other questions? Oh, we got one more.
Hi, Todd Zumak from the Ozardes Group. Got several members here tonight, and we were pleased to find out that you were going to be doing this presentation. We wanted to kind of compare notes. So as a point of comparison, our Thursday night nets are at 7 p.m. on the first and second Thursdays of the month. We have a directed net. We have a detailed script that we follow, and we follow a pattern of calling specific users. We ask them if they have traffic when they check in, and we have a round of asking for that actual traffic. And then we usually do an exercise of some kind where we actually we prepare a scenario in advance, and we record a simulated weather event, like that. And then the other thing I wanted to point out is that whenever there's a severe thunderstorm warning in Ozaukee County, we have an informal net that runs on our standard repeater. What's the number, Dave? What's the frequency for the Ozardes repeater? But thank you, 147.33. And so we'll hang out on that thing, and we'll do informal reports of what we're seeing as kind of a prelude to possibly getting called up in more severe weather conditions. So that's how we do things on the Ozardes side of things.
Now, how long does your net usually last?
Our nets typically are half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes, depends on the length of the exercise itself. We've also been doing remote or mobile nets where we'll send people out in predetermined points so we know distances, and they are all running simplex because we actually operate multiple simplex channels as well as the main repeater frequencies. And so we're testing how effectively we can communicate to simulate a true power down situation where there are no cell phones and perhaps the repeaters go down because they don't have backup. So we test that formally like twice a year. We'll do that type of a simplex test.
Excellent. Another question over here, Jim.
So I'm not a member yet, but after semi-retired, I feel like I'm back in the room with a bunch of engineers. Not that you all are. But my name's Rick Berger. So the one thing I'm noticing is net means basically on-air meetings almost, if I was to define it. And I've been listening for 2 weeks and it's so quiet. Is there a place on the web or wherever where I can every day go to some net somewhere and listen in so that I'm more active to listen in? And also, I used to volunteer at the Grafton Police Department, and I was a weather watcher, certified by NOAA, and I'd like to do that as well. So I'm looking for a hobby where I'm actually very active in it. So and if I did get it, I would be interested in volunteering for the NCO.
Excellent. Fred created a list of nets in the area. Pretty sure it's on our website. It's on our
The list has UHF, VHF nets. There's a net on one of the different repeaters every night of the week. Often there's 2 or 3. And they're typically in around 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night.
Well, there's a list. Yeah, you don't have to be a member of the Ozaki Radio Club to get that list. You can download it from our website. Yeah. Anybody else?
One more point. Next Thursday is our Ozari's monthly meeting. We're doing something for the first time. We're going to be meeting at the fairgrounds. We'll have our meeting right after the weather spotter training. So you can get weather spotter training and meet some guys that meet basically every single week of the month that we're doing some kind of a net. So
Where on the fairgrounds is that?
is it the curling barn? Somebody.
It's
just look for the cars with the antennas and you'll the pavilion.
Just have a comment in that I have been net control for many highly directed nets, Trek 100 bike rides, which had medical emergencies. So you're handling traffic between amateur radio and ambulances, public events, etc. I've been there, I've done that. And my point is, you don't jump into that kind of net control scenario without some experience. So if you're a newer ham or you want to get involved, do the Ozaki net, because that's where you start getting experience in handling traffic, writing down information, who's next, direct, okay, you go next, and eventually move your way up into an Aries kind of net control situation, because they do simulated nets. But if there's a real weather net, it's another gear.
Oh, one more, Bill.
I just wanted to say that the at the bottom of the page on the Ozaki Radio Club website, there's it says or see page links, and there are 6 links, and one of them is net listings. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, don't all line up at once. Thank you.
Okay.